In this video, we're going to be getting into the basics of accessor and mutator functions, or more casually known as getters and setters. Just picture some air quotes around those. Why these terms are used should be obvious after a certain point. Here I've created a class called product. Thinking about product at a store or something like that. Some attributes of a product could be the name of the product, the department it's found in, the price of the product, and let's say a customer rating. For this example, we're going to be setting the customer rating as a letter grade from A through F, but it could really be anything. Then after this, there's a constructor with some values that are passed in, after which values are assigned to values inside the object. Please notice that everything is in public right now. Nothing is in private, but we're going to be changing this very soon. Now over in main, I've chosen the product laptop, which happens to be the laptop that I'm using right now. Not very creative, I know. But here we have the name, the Acer Aspire E15. The department is electronics. The price is $349.99. And let's say the customer rating or the grade is B. And underneath here, this is just the code that will output these values. Notice that we will be changing how we get the output for customer rating after we set up our getters and setters. Let's do a quick test run just to make sure everything is working. And everything looks good. Now this is all well and good, but with the way everything is set up currently, these values over here can easily be changed to anything. For instance, I could change this B to cat. And then in the output, the rating would be set to cat. I could also change it down here to banana. And this would overwrite cat, and the rating would then become banana. Well, let's see how that is working. Yep, this laptop is rated at banana. Now, this doesn't make any sense. And this is one area where getters and setters can help. Using getters and setters, we can make it more difficult to manipulate this particular value and set some restrictions on it. Our first step will be moving customer rating into the access modifier private. It's here. Delete it down here. Now, public and private are called access modifiers or access specifiers. Access modifiers are keywords used for accessing classes, methods, and other members. There's also an access modifier called protected, but we're not going to be getting into that one here. Public members can be accessed by any other code in the same class or other classes that reference it. But private members can be accessed only by code in the same class. By moving customer rating to private, we can now see that it can no longer be fiddled with in main. And if we try to run the program now, we get an error. This is because the customer rating now cannot be changed outside of the class. The values must be changed within the class. So how do we do this? Getters and setters. Overall, getters and setters allow you to protect your data. This is a technique used often when creating classes. How it works is this. For each variable, which should be put into private, a set method will set the value, and a get method will retrieve the value, hence the terms getters and setters. Because the variable is private and you need to go through the setter to change it, conditions can be set to restrict what the value can be, which is useful in this case because we only want this value over here to be A, B, C, D, or F. So we can create a public function over here, which is our accessor or setter, through which we can set the value for the customer rating. And we can make another public function, the getter or mutator, to retrieve the new value. And this is the basic syntax for getters and setters. We call this set rating. And here for getting the rating, return customer rating. And you notice that we dropped this over here, and we have to change this to set rating, parentheses rating. So to change the way everything passes through. Now we haven't set any conditions, so we can still change the value to anything we like in main, but we can't do it this way anymore. Now we have to do this by calling the setter function, and then in here setting it to whatever we want it to be. I picked apple. So now apple should overwrite cat. But we also need to change this right here to laptop.getRating to retrieve the value that we set right here. So now if everything was done correctly, if this is run, the rating should come out to be apple. And it looks like it is. All right, great. But you notice that we still are able to set it to something like apple versus getting our ratings, which are A, B, C, and D, and F. So why should we do this? In a case where the kinds of restrictions we want for the rating here are not a concern, you might ask why you shouldn't just edit the value directly, or why it's considered good coding practice to use getters and setters like this. There are a couple of reasons for this. Number one, if you decide that some actions should be taken every time you change the value of a particular variable, you only need to edit the set method instead of looking for every place you change that variable. And number two, if someone else needs to use your code, they can simply look for all the methods starting with get or set, instead of having to search for specific variables. In this case, we do want to limit what the customer rating can be. So we can achieve this by adding an if-else statement to the setter. This way, the program will check for a valid input and otherwise return that the rating is invalid. So let's just change this here. And so now we have if the rating is A or B or C or D or F, then it's valid and we should have that output as the rating. Otherwise, the output should be invalid rating. This would have been difficult to do without using getters and setters. But now there are some restrictions in place. And if you ever need to add a letter or alter the system, it's all in one place for you. So you just have to look for where the setter is and change the code in here instead of having to search everywhere for possible places that variables may be. So let's see if it works. Here we have the rating and we're trying to set it to apple. If everything works correctly, this should not be possible. Sorry about that small error. Forgot a curly bracket right there, but it's all working now. So there's invalid rating. So when we try to change the rating to apple, the output for the rating becomes invalid as it should. But if we try to change the rating to something considered valid, A or B or C or D or F, let's change it to C. It should have a valid output. Yep, and the rating is changed to C. So you can see how this can be useful for whatever restrictions you might have on anything that you're trying to do. And I hope this video has been helpful. If you want to play around with the code and get a feel for how it works, click on the link in the description and have a blast. Bye.